All right, welcome into Big Hitters Only, recording Monday, February 10th at 9:07 p.m. We just watched UNC get completely beat down by Clemson, falling to the Tigers 85-65 in a game that was over, I thought, within the first 4 to 8 minutes in the second half. The Tar Heels now move to 14-11 overall, 7-6 in the ACC. We have Connor and Spencer here. First, I want to talk about Delta Spirits, new sponsor, drinkdeltaspirits.com. We've been getting some good sales on this. It's a THC-based product. Comes in like a can as well, 4 different flavors: blueberry lemonade, cherry limeade, Paloma, which I think is grapefruit, and ginger mule. Local Kernersville, Greensboro company, drinkdeltaspirits.com, and then use code BHO10. It essentially is a good substitute for alcohol, very relaxing, good euphoric high feeling. All right, guys, this was probably the most uninspiring, embarrassing, kick in the mouth type game. I thought it was just over so early. You look up and UNC is down over 20 at some point early in the second half and never got any closer. I don't know, man. This is bad. This is probably the low point of the season right now. You knew you were going to lose to Duke. You would think, all right, Clemson, good chance they beat UNC down in Little John Coliseum. But to lose like this, I don't think we saw that coming. I'll go to you first, Spencer. What are your kind of initial takeaways? I don't know how much we can spin on this game. We'll get into some other stuff, but initial thoughts on this loss.
Yeah, I thought we played fine in the first maybe 8 minutes to that under 12 media timeout. And then Clemson really caught fire, and it was just no turning back from there. The defense in the first half was not good. I mean, giving up 49 points to anyone. I mean, so many uncontested threes, so many, relatively easy looks at the rim, straight line drives, lack of help defense, all the things that contribute to a poor defensive showing seem to happen, for Clemson tonight. And so just really disappointing. I mean, really disappointing. You think, okay, we've got a chance to keep our postseason hopes alive tonight. I mean, yeah, sure, Clemson's good, but they went to triple overtime against Georgia Tech. Like, maybe they have a little hangover coming off the game against Duke. Like, it's a Monday night. Any cocktail of things that you could try to say about this game. And again, came out okay. It was close there for about 8 minutes, and then Clemson pulled away and never looked back.
Honestly, Ross, you kind of made me think of this in the intro. This is a stark contrast to what we saw earlier in the year, because even when Carolina would go down in the first half early in December, November, January, they would usually fight back and make it a game. And usually they would lose the one-score games, but they would at least fight back and make it a game. Tonight, they go down 20, 18 in the first half, 20 in the first half. The second half almost felt like a formality at that point. Yeah. I had no faith that they would even make it a game. And that kind of leads into my initial takeaway. The first half, there's a couple of numbers from the first half that I just want to bring up. Clemson was 8 for 12 from 3 in the first half, 67%, 56% from the field as a whole, 7 offensive boards in the first half. They rebounded 61.5% of their misses in their first half, of their own misses, offensive rebounds, and they out-rebounded Carolina 19-9 in the first half. That was the game right there. That was just domination, and to come out flat like that when Clemson had that emotional, hard-fought win over Duke 48 hours ago, and Carolina is basically playing for their season, for their life, and for them to be the ones to come out flat, that's tough.
That's a great point. Like, this is a game that UNC had to win to make the tournament. Like, that should be the selling point, right? Hubert gets them together on Saturday or on Sunday. Like, look, guys, this is a great chance for us. Like, coming off a win, we beat Clemson in Little John Coliseum. Like, we're in a pretty good spot with the rest of the schedule to make a run at the tournament. And they come out like that, pretty bad. He had 9 rebounds in the first half. That was very glaring. Let's go through some stats real quick. Clemson shot 48% from 3, 12 for 25. At one point, they were shooting like 68% from three.
The first half.
Yeah. And then deep into the second half, too, I was watching with some buddies. This is crazy. UNC only shot 11 free throws. At one point, I think they only shot one in the first half. And at one point, they were like 1 for 5 from the free throw line. Let's go to the rebounding for the game. 41 to 28. Like, it's just such a non-Roy Williams type team, you know? Like, the free throws, and you'd always count on a Roy Williams coach team to shoot more free throws than the other team and to out-rebound the other team. And, like, I feel like UNC, that's been a struggle each game. UNC didn't shoot very well. Ian Jackson scored 3 points at the very end of the game. RJ Davis had 18 points, but no one else really stood out. They've really gotten – Ian Jackson's really fallen off from his run of 5 or 6 games in 20 minutes. It was just super deflating. A game was over. I mean, what was the halftime score?
They're down 18, right? Was
down 16, I think 16 or 18.
49-33.
Yeah, I mean, so it was pretty much over at that point. The big man for Clemson had 20 points in the first half, who was a transfer from Cincinnati. Like, why didn't we go after that guy in the portal? Like, he would have been perfect for UNC. It's like so many missed opportunities across the board. And I think one point you said how UNC was in a lot of these games in November and December against really good teams. Is Clemson's gotten better. Like, these teams have gotten better now. And I think UNC has either gotten worse or plateaued, while Clemson was maybe beatable in December, and now they're rolling. Beat Duke, beat UNC now. They're playing really strongly. A lot of veterans on that team as well. That's just another –
It's a tournament team, and Carolina's a bubble team, and you saw that difference tonight, honestly. And it's hard to accept.
Well, not a bubble team anymore.
Well, yeah.
Likely. So, Ross, you said something interesting, and about – like what Hubert may or may not have said to the team, say, yesterday. So you said Hubert gets the team together and we say, okay, we've got a great chance tomorrow night against Clemson. We can put we can see how we're shaping up for the postseason. This is a great chance to get us in a good spot. So one thing that I experienced as a player was that the discussions in the locker room or in the film room or anything like that are only about like the game that you're reviewing film of that you just played, or the game that you're reviewing film for that you're about to play. They're about practice. They're about effort. They're never big picture discussions like that. We're never talking about like, all right, guys, like if we win one, we'll still be able to make it into the tournament. Like the only time that we ever talked about what seed we would be was like when we're sitting over at Roy Williams' house for the NCAA tournament selection show. And we're like literally watching what seed we're going to be. That's the only time the NCAA tournament was ever discussed. You know, it was always just one game at a time. And so I think that's an interesting thing for people to understand about the way, not just Carolina basketball, I think that probably every college program worth its salt anywhere, they're not talking about NCAA tournament hopes. They're talking about the task at hand. And the task at hand is whatever game they're about to be playing or whatever practice they're about to go into. So, you know, it's just an interesting conversation. Like I remember talking much earlier in the season about like a moral victory. I can't remember what game it was, but like there's no such thing as a moral victory in a locker room, you know? So, I think the thing that's really hard about the rest of the season for this Tar Heel team is that, you know, obviously you've always got something to play for. You've got the name on the front of the jersey. You've got, you know, your family to play for. You've got, you know, all of that stuff. But when you're in a position where you kind of don't feel like you're playing for your tournament hopes, that's a position that only, 3 North Carolina teams have been in over the past 25 years. And so it's a weird position to be in. I think probably the worst thing that we could see throughout the rest of the season is if there's just no effort, there's no spark, There's
Yeah.
no inspiration. There's no team. That would really be heartbreaking. I mean, like, yes, it's heartbreaking to be sitting in this position on the outside looking in of the NCAA tournament at this point in the season. You know, like we've talked about before, at this point in the season, we're talking like, are we going to be a 1 seed? Like, maybe we'll be a 2. Maybe we'll be a 3. You know, those are the types of conversations we're used to having at this time. So, you know, maybe it's good that we get humbled a little bit every once in a while. But it would be even more heartbreaking again if we just really like see the wheels totally fall off. And I hope that doesn't happen.
So that gets into like, what if that happens? Like, all right, I mean,
yeah.
I think the chances of UNC making the tournament right now are very, very slim because they have a couple more losses on the schedule. I think, you know, Duke is a clear loss. Syracuse
They've only got
away.
2 games left with teams over 500, Ross. Florida State and Duke. That's the only 2 chances for a decent win. Everyone else is terrible.
and then they have Florida State away and Syracuse away. There's definitely some wins on there too, but there's not many games left. There's like 8 games left. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 games left. So yeah, I mean, I think how UNC plays and looks, as Spenser alluded to, could be a deciding factor on what happens with Hubert Davis's job. I mean, as we talked about in the last pod with Spenser and Mike, we said like we got to treat it like he's coming back because that's what's being reported by Inside Carolina and Sherelle, that he is coming back. So that's how we have to approach this thing. But I mean, things can change. There could be material change. There's going to be way more pressure now. It's going to turn up. And if they lose, you know, half of the next games, I mean, I think that is fireable. Like if you go 4-8 or was it 4-4 or 4-3 or 3-4, you know, that's pretty bad. And then you don't win the ACC. Like if you see a really deflated, unenthusiastic team that's not playing for the coach, like you've lost the locker room type deal, I think that's when you could see some things change. I mean, if you go on Twitter or the message boards, everybody wants them fired.
It's steamy.
And so things can really derail. Dark. Yeah, things can really derail. Like in football, like once you can't recruit because you're on the hot seat, things get worse and worse. It happened to Fedora. Like he had a 3-win season, and a 2-win season, and he was gone because they were negative recruiting him, and he couldn't win games. And you can see the same thing happen here, where it's like, well, next year's not going to be much better. They're going to lose a lot of players. They're going to have to completely reload, and that's possible. But I think the big thing here, I want to get into this conversation, is about GM. Do you have anything to kind of add on that topic? I mean, this is the dog days too. It's like late February. You got a long trip home from Clemson. You have to wait 6 days to play again on Saturday. Like this is when the teams could quit. You have people thinking about the draft, thinking about, you know, positioning themselves, graduating and getting ready for the draft. Like, I don't know. Any thoughts on that, Connor, Spenser?
I think there's going to be a couple surprise transfers in the offseason. And I'm thinking like a Seth Trimble, a Jalen Washington, maybe somebody that people have penciled into, okay, this is what next year's team's going to look like just because of how bad this year has gone. Or they want a different role or just a change of scenery. And the other thing is, you're right about the draft look ahead. If you're Ian Jackson, like you've seen your role diminish. In the last 7 games, he's averaged 7 points a game. 1 game in double figures over the last 7. What's your mindset if you're Ian Jackson? It's like, wait, I'm supposed to be a first round pick on this team, and now I'm getting 15, 18 minutes a game. I just think it's kind of a cluster. And moving forward, I hope the locker room isn't lost. But there was moments tonight where the bench was just sitting there, no emotion, nothing was going on, down 20, and it's almost like, let's get this over with. Yeah. And as a Carolina fan supporter, that's just not what you want to see.
It's just I can just imagine the post game press conference is gonna be miserable. Like there's 4 reporters there. You know,
there've been some tough ones. I've watched most of them, or at least a little bit of them, and they've been pretty dark.
He has no answers. I think he knows he has no answers. Like this team has no fight. They have no leadership. I think the leadership has been a big issue. You know, no rumors of like a players only meeting. I think it's kind of reached a head now. I think we'll look back and this game on a Monday night, on a cold February Monday night, will be like, all right, this was kind of the climax of the season, or the opposite of a climax.
Nail in the coffin.
Yeah. Let's look at the schedule real quick. Syracuse on Saturday, NC State at home, Virginia at home, road against Florida State, Miami road against Virginia Tech, and then Duke at home. So definitely, I mean, it's gonna be all games are gonna be close, and there's some chances for some wins, but I think there's not much room to really improve the resume,
If they
knowing
lose
how
at
tough
home,
Duke's going to be.
if they lose at home to a 9-14 NC State team, I think that might be the real, that's it. 9-14 NC State team.
Yeah. Bubba's put in a really tough position because he is going to have a
No
lot
kidding.
of pressure. He's going to have a lot of pressure from a lot of big money donors. He's have some pressure probably to keep him too. Everybody wants to see him succeed. It's a UNC guy. He's the first black coach.
Absolutely.
First black coach in UNC history. And I think it moves into discussion. They're going to give him the support of a general manager, or they're forcing him to hire a general manager and maybe some more staff members and maybe some staff changes. And I think we're going to involve the discussion there. There's been more news on that on Inside Carolina and Twitter. I think it's a great move. I think it had to happen. I think it had to happen 2 years ago. I think it takes a lot of pressure off you as a head coach to start focusing on the transfer portal. I think it should be hired last week. The transfer portal, you're starting now scouting who's going to be available. All right, which fourth-year senior has an extra year? I guess the COVID stuff's done, but all right, which players might be unhappy? Who can we get that's a freshman that's not getting enough playing time that may have a bigger role in our team? Who are we going to lose? All right, let's talk to some agents. What's the negotiations going to be like? That needs to be happening. We haven't heard anything about hiring process. We heard some interviews. Spenser, any big picture GM opinions? Knowing what you know?
Yeah. So I listened to a lot of content earlier this week surrounding the GM discussion. Inside Carolina's with Sherelle and Joey and Greg. That was very informative. They were breaking down budgets. Plug Inside Carolina, man. They're the best. So, but they basically explained what I got out of that discussion was that there's more than one way to skin a cat when it comes to general management of a college basketball team. But with there being more than one way to skin it, essentially, you have to have somebody who is in charge of non-basketball, on-court basketball stuff that is not a coach.
Mm-hmm.
No, and not necessarily not a coach, not a head coach. I think they use Michigan and Dusty May as an example. One of their assistants is kind of their general manager type. He does NIL stuff. He does talks with agents and those sorts of things. So, we've heard Hubert Davis say a number of times that he's never come outright and said, I don't like speaking with agents, but he's just made the comment a number of times that he says oftentimes he's speaking with agents more often than he's speaking with players or their families. And, the kind of reading between the lines is that he would prefer to not be doing that. So I think hiring anyone, to be quite honest, is going to be a boon for the program. Because getting some extra minds in the room, somebody who is covering recruiting, covering NIL discussions, covering conversations with agents and things like that, who is not the head coach, that is a boon for the program. I don't care who it is. It doesn't need to be Buzz Peterson. It doesn't need to be Mitch Kupchak or some, seasoned vet. Obviously you want that. And I think North Carolina will hire that. But, just somebody to handle those things so that the basketball coaches can focus on coaching basketball. I think that's the moral of the story here for North Carolina is that we're going to have people who can handle the things that the coaches would, if you really twisted their arm, would say they would prefer they didn't want to have to do. So those are kind of my thoughts on it.
Yeah. I think
it's the right move, ultimately.
Of course. Yeah, of course. I think every team should have a general manager type. I need to go listen to that podcast. Greg and Sherelle are very good about talking about that kind of stuff. Yeah. I also
one note. Sorry, I'm gonna one thing. This kind of blew my mind, and I'll present it without comment. I think it was in the 2022-2023 season. We talk about peer institutions sometimes, other blue bloods, the Kentuckys, the Kansases, the whoever's. North Carolina spent $200,000 on recruiting. So that's not NIL or anything like that. That's coaches hitting the road to go visit with families, to go to AAU tournaments, to visit and see kids play games and stuff. North Carolina spent $200,000. Kentucky spent $1 million. Mm-hmm. And so, again, not to say that the amount of money you spend on your recruiting trips is directly related to the quality of player that you get, because 2022, 2023 is when we brought Cormac Ryan in. We brought Harrison Ingram in, like had a great team last year. So again, not to say that those two numbers are directly related, but I was pretty shocked at the disparity there. I mean, I feel like that could be an area where that they explore in the budget. It's like, well, if you look at this team, the team that's on the court for Carolina, they're lacking in a few areas. And you could, who knows, who's to say really and truly why that is? It's a number of different things, but I don't know. I feel a little dirty saying this as a former player, but like maybe if they spent a few more bucks recruiting, they would have gotten some different players. I mean, I don't know. I really don't know.
Man, recruiting has fallen off. I mean, they're not getting the top 10 players it really got. I mean, look, back I think I said this in the last podcast or 2 podcasts ago. Like when they got, it was the year they got Ty Lawson was number 1 point guard. They got Wayne Ellington, the number 1 shooting guard. They got Brandon Wright, the number 1 power forward. And like they followed that with, Hansbrough was a year before that. And then a couple of years later, they got like John Henson, Reggie Bullock, Kendall Marshall. Like they were always getting 5 stars and like some of the best players at their position. That just doesn't happen anymore. I mean, and now it's like you can pay. So everyone should be on the same playing field, the top programs. It's a matter of closing and having a coach who can build relationships and close. And you could see in the recruiting of transfers this year that Hubert could not close on the center. Like you had plenty of playing time to sell. I maybe money was an issue, but I understand that the offer for the center was equivalent to what other programs are offering. Maybe it wasn't, but just couldn't close. And that's a matter of having the right coach, the right assistant coaches, negotiating and being charismatic and winning over the parents or the agents or whatever. I think when it comes to...
Let me also say something too to that. Like, I don't know how anyone could meet Hubert Davis and not want to play for this guy. He is the man. And like, he is as upstanding of a guy as I've ever met in my entire life. He is like, he's very well spoken. He has all of the things that you want. Like, he has all the things that you would want as a parent for your child to go play for. And it's like, you hear people talk about NIL and recruiting is that like those parents aren't thinking those terms. Kids aren't thinking in those terms, but like
thinking in dollar signs. I feel like that hurts me. Like
maybe I'm just a romantic or I'm just old school, but like I feel like who the coach is has to have some level of impact on where these kids want to go to school. I know that if I was a high school player, I would want to go play for Hubert Davis. I mean, easy for me to say, but I just don't see how somebody wouldn't want to play for him.
There's less of a consequence now. You can just leave after 1 year and transfer 4 times and play the next year. So there's less of a consequence of doing that.
Yeah, and I think transfer recruiting is even more important now because you can get a ready-made junior or senior instant impact player. And if you miss the transfer portal like UNC did, it can really cost you because you're going to have to fill in holes, for the upcoming season. So back to the GM conversation. I think another podcast to listen to, I don't listen to this to a lot, but a lot of people told me to listen to it, is the Adam Lucas Jones Angel one after the Alabama game. And they broke down the Alabama staff and how they operated in game before the game. I went back and listened to it a couple weeks ago, so it was almost 2 months late, about how big of a staff Alabama had with all the different assistants and like little analysts running around filming the game, running highlights like back to the huddle and during halftime, filming and watching Hubert and his staff and relaying the plays back to the staff and to the team. And it's had a huge staff. And like whatever they're doing, UNC needs to look at that and be like, all right, we need XYZ. I think UNC should hire someone who can coach offense, like an offense coordinator, defensive coordinator. They need to have the most modern video team that does whatever NBA teams or whatever Alabama's doing. Like we need to have every single advantage that other teams have. And then of course, like a GM, someone who handles transfer recruiting, someone who handles, grassroots recruiting, those 2 different things. Maybe the same person can handle the overarching thing, but dude, have someone that is focused on high schools and the AAU stuff, and have someone that's purely mining the transfer portal. These guys don't have to be, it can be 20-year-old analyst who's locked in,
Yeah.
graduated from Harvard. His whole job is to look at opposing teams and see what people could be available and just have a lot more info. I mean, talk about college football. They do this stuff up the wazoos at Georgia and Alabama. So I think you're going to see more of that. I think there's some reporting there's going to be a GM plus like a couple more staff members. And you need to have someone with a plan, but then have tons of staffers that are making, you know, don't have to be making crazy money that can do all this stuff and provide Hubert with everything he needs to win. There's no excuses. And then it's all about acquiring talent and
get
developing
a bunch
it.
of student analysts in there, like
Yeah.
Greg and Sherelle and Joey were talking about that. Student analysts. Alabama has a bunch of student analysts. Like,
Yeah.
they
I would have
kind
loved
of
to do
broke
that a
down
couple
like,
years ago. Where's my
oh my
job
gosh,
offer,
dude,
Hubert?
Roy Williams did that. He kept stats for Dean Smith during practice. He just sat there and gave all of his time to Carolina basketball. All right, think about this. No more JV program next year. You'd be hard-pressed to tell me that any of those kids who are not going to get the opportunity to play JV this year after playing for Marcus Page this year as the JV head coach wouldn't want to be involved in the program in one way or another.
That's a good point.
And they can
Get
be
those kids involved, man. Yeah.
They can be practice players too. Yeah. And serve as an internship or whatever. I mean, there's so many opportunities for that. I think there needs to be a huge look in the mirror for what they need to bring. And like, dude, we gotta hire a assistant that's not a Carolina guy. Like, hire some. You need outside ideas. Like, you just have to develop, and someone has to be able to say no or say yes, and like, you need different ideas. Like, bring someone in from some hotshot Group of 5 offense or Group of 5 defense that's killing it. That's the third assistant on some shitty team or a lesser team. Bring them in, offer more money to give you ideas on how to run. The offense is just so stale. Connor?
Yeah, that was my next comment is look outside of the Carolina family for some of those. If you don't want to do it for the head coach, at least do it for like the rest of the staff. And the other question I kind of had for you guys going about the staff and the GM thing you guys brought up, how do you feel about the timing of Hubert's comments where he came out and said, basically what we're doing right now, the current model is not working. To do that during the season where, yes, Carolina's season's looking pretty grim right now, but they are still alive. Technically, they're still fighting for a tournament spot. If you're a player in that locker room and you hear that, like, you already know in your head, okay, whatever we're doing is not working. But to hear that comment made during the season, like, hey, next year we got to switch it up, wouldn't that affect you in some way? I feel like the timing was a little off in his comments.
I think he was told by administration that you're going to hire a GM and you have to hire it soon. And so I guess he was asked that during the Top of the Hill radio show.
Yeah.
I don't think it was about this team. It was about how we were doing things in general as a program. Okay. Carolina basketball needs to change a couple things. I mean, I imagine we'll hear about a GM hire in the next 2 weeks. Portal opens, I think, after the first weekend of the tournament this year. So a week later than last year. And so it's going to be a huge offseason for UNC. I think you're right. We'll see a lot of players transfer that maybe you weren't expecting just because they need a fresh start. I'd hope to get Trimble and Powell back. Those would be two nice pieces to return. But I'm not sure. I mean, Trimble's got to kind of be insulted that he was benched for a while there. So we'll see. All right, let me talk one last time about Delta Spirits. DrinkDeltaSpirits.com. Promo code BHO10. These cans are great. This is like an alcohol substitute here with the bottle. It serves as like a liquor substitute. These are more like spritzers or, like a little cocktail to have after work. DrinkDeltaSpirits.com. Promo code BHO at checkout. Also, remember, rate, review, subscribe. YouTube. We're growing on YouTube. I was texting y'all. Every video we put out does bigger numbers than the one before, especially after losses. Haven't had too many big wins to talk about, but the YouTube numbers have been great, continue to grow. And then Apple and Spotify. All right, let's get back to this game. I mean, is there anything else to talk about? I mean, are they flying to Clemson, Spencer? Do you know? Is that a flight? I would think it is.
I think so.
To
the
Greenville.
The annoying thing about going to Clemson is they still have to go to Greenville and then drive another 45 minutes.
Yeah,
they fly. Generally speaking, I don't know what they're doing under Coach Davis.
Yeah, I would think they
I'm not
drive to.
sure.
I don't know. This is weird talk, but I think they drive to Winston-Salem for Wake,
Yeah, drive to
Duke
Wake,
State.
drive to Charlottesville, Duke and State,
Do you
obviously.
fly to Charlotte? Oh, I think you drive to Charlotte. That's a long drive, though.
If you played in Charlotte, it's only like 2.5 hours,
Yeah,
2.5 hours. So like you would drive to Charlotte.
Charlottesville and
Yeah,
Blacksburg.
Clemson, Charlottesville.
Like drive to Cal, Stanford. No,
Yeah, we drove to Blacksburg. Yeah, I drove to Blacksburg
Did
because
you
like
really?
there's no reason to fly to Roanoke. Like it's not that far of a drive, maybe 3.5 hours,
Yeah. Anyway,
something like that.
saying it's a sad ride back on that or flight back
Yeah.
from Clemson. Spencer, what's the message now in the locker room? What gave us the pep talk heading into Syracuse? Long week of practice, just such an uninspiring performance.
Yeah. I'm at a little bit of a loss, to be honest with you. I mean, I think the message has to be, we've got to have some pride in what we're doing here.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have any pride in what we're doing, then you need to hang up your jersey and not stop coming around. Don't come to practice if you don't want to play. I feel like that's something that coaches say sometimes. It's like if you don't want to be here, you don't have to be. If you don't want to be here, we don't want you here. That sort of thing. I don't think Hubert Davis would say that necessarily, but that's the attitude that you have to have. It's like, we're still playing for something here. I mentioned it earlier. Like we're still playing for North Carolina. You're still playing to to reflect well on your families. You're still playing like as much as you're playing more for the name on the front of the jersey, like to some extent, everybody plays at least a little bit for the name on the back. Like, I think I said it a podcast or two ago. It's like, what sort of legacy do you want to have? Like, do you want to always be viewed as the team that just gave up? Like, that would be terrible, So, I think, they can still kind of redeem themselves. You've just got to be prepared to step up and keep playing hard, man. I mean, there's nothing else to do. If you don't play hard, then there's no reason to even show up.
Yeah, I was talking to someone earlier today, and I think they need to try different things now. I think mixing it up a little bit. I thought, they went zone at one point against Duke. Like maybe go zone a little more at some point. Full court press early and often after every made basket. I think Drake Powell should be playing way more. I think he is, when he's in, he just looks like the best player on the court sometimes with his rebounding and defense and shot. He's the only one that can block a shot, it seems. He played 26 minutes, so he did play a lot. And he played more than Elliott last game. Ian, you got to get him back on track. And look, RJ, this is RJ's legacy. He'll be remembered, for last year and for the national championship run. But he needs to take over games offensively. You saw some of those step back threes today. And I didn't watch the Pitt game. I was on a bachelor party, but he had 3 threes there. So maybe a little more glimpse of the old RJ. But he needs to step up. Look, this is my last year. How do I want to go out? So.
Yeah,
all right.
He's got to step up in the right way, though. I mean, we've griped about it a lot, and Justin Jackson and Theo Pinson and Ray Felton and these guys have griped about it a lot. All of the one-on-one, there's no freelance offense at all. You don't have to run Roy Williams freelance offense with 2 bigs and all of this stuff like that. But I mean, 4 guys standing there doing nothing while they watch another guy take 14 dribbles. They could do more. Again, I just wish somebody would go set a back screen and then set another back screen and then set another one and then cut hard to the basket and just really, really basic, even pickup principles almost, let's space the floor. Let's not just stand there and ball watch. And if you are the guy who's dribbling, look up and try to make a pass. I mean, as much as Elliot Cadeau has kind of made some poor decisions at sometimes, at least he's always trying to make a play, He at least he's trying to do that. The ball sticks in some guys' hands. And we've talked about Ian Jackson. I watched a really interesting podcast. I think the guy's name is David Sisk, and he's a coach, and he's coached a bunch of kind of pro guys and college guys and everything. And he said he said, I went to do a film review on one of Ian Jackson's like 25-point games, and there wasn't even film to review because all of his points were like fast breaks or one-on-one moves.
Yeah.
There was no actions that got him open. He wasn't coming off of flare screens or like making interesting moves like to get open or anything like that. It was just very like super basic. You know, he had 25 points, but you know, he had 7 layups and you know, and a couple of 3-pointers. Like, you know, the offense just gets so, I don't even want to say stagnant because Hubert Davis has said that he really doesn't like that term. It just becomes very one-dimensional.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the variety of ways that guys are scoring is very limited. You know, we're not moving the ball in a way that's conducive to getting guys open in different areas of the court. You know, parking a guy in the corner, I could fall off the couch, like just watching it with how, you know, I'm just like,
need a couple of Delta spirits.
Please stop me standing there, you know, like, so, and I don't know, man. I wish, I agree with you, Ross. I wish we'd just like throw some different looks out there, man. Let's all run around in circles. You know, that's all that we did under Roy Williams. We all just ran around in circles and set screens for each other. Like, it's not, there's nothing special.
My last comment is this. Carolina has their next 6 games against mid to bottom tier ACC games. If they don't go 5-1, that's a failure. And we're going to know really quickly against Syracuse on Saturday, and especially at home against State on a Wednesday night, we're going to know if this team is really quit or not based on how they come out in those games. If they come out flat in the first half, we know how the rest of the season's going to go. And my closing thought is, with Carolina teams in the past with talent, it's like, you think they can make a run in the ACC tournament, some miracle run and win a few games and maybe improve their chances? I don't feel that way with this team. There's a real shot they lose day 2.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel confident in any game with this team. I mean, every game, you know, it's going to be a, you know, close one. Like every game, it's been close. Anyway, I think this was Spenser's best podcast. I think we'll look back on this podcast.
Spencer just cleared out ISO, top of the key.
Yeah. Well, he is long-winded, but he also interrupted me a lot, which I liked, like jumping in. Good podcast symmetry. No, that's good. I don't want to be asking like questions. It's good conversation to kind of jump in and stuff. So big steps for Spenser in the podcasting game tonight. We'll remember this one, February 10th. All right, guys. Thanks for your time. Connor, producer Connor, behind the scenes as well. And Spenser, guys, thanks for listening. And remember to tell your friends, rate, review, subscribe, follow, like, engage on all the different platforms on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and go to drinkdeltaspirits.com. Use the promo code BHO10, and we'll see you next time.